I've really got to start with this New York Times story. Unbelievable story. Now, to set this up, this is the story they told about today. It was a huge, huge story about what they called it codename Crossfire Hurricane, which comes from a Rolling Stones song. Codename Crossfire Hurricane, the secret origins of the Trump investigation. Now, to set this up, you have to understand why they ran this. The intelligence community has been using the New York Times as a line of defense all throughout this investigation. They've been leaking stories to the New York Times before the stories came out, as Devin Nunes, or Nunes, or Now Name, or whatever his name is, Devin Nunes has heroically, truly heroically, this is, I kid around about it, but he's actually doing a great job. He's on the House Intelligence Committee. He has been extracting, dragging these documents out of the FBI and the CIA and the Justice Department, and they keep sending him over redacted. Poor Andy McCarthy over at NRO is reading these things, his eyes are bleeding, and they're all redacted for no reason except to protect the Justice Department. They're not protecting sources. They just are trying to keep this information. And you remember Rod Rosenstein, right? He had this thing, we're not going to be extorted. You think wait, excuse me, this is congressional oversight. It's not extortion. It is not extortion. Nunes or Nunes, whatever the hell he is, he has been dragging this stuff out. And now, on top of this, the Inspector General is about to release his report on the investigation into Hillary's emails and the investigation into Trump's collusion, Russian collusion. And remember, this is the same gang of Keystone cops that were investigating both things. So we had one side where Hillary Clinton was like, come on over, Hillary. No, you don't have to take an oath. It's fine. Who's that? Well, that's my friend. Oh, we'll say it's your lawyer. So she has lawyer-client privilege. Don't worry about it. Oh, and by the way, we won't even take this to the Justice Department. We'll just announce on TV, we're the FBI, we'll announce on TV that you're innocent because you didn't mean to do it. Thanks for playing, and we'll see you later. And then they went over to investigate Donald Trump. Now, so you have to understand what's happening now is Nunes is getting this stuff out of the FBI and it's coming out. And the IG report, which is reportedly really bad, they're saying it's worse than everybody thought, that it really is going to take the FBI to task. So the FBI is leaking to the New York Times, and the New York Times is spinning to protect the FBI. That is what they're doing. So listen to this. Now, here's the other thing. Remember, the whole thing was to prove, at first, the whole thing was to prove that the Steele dossier, this collection of Russian misinformation about Donald Trump with the hookers, urinating on the bed and all this stuff, that was not the reason they started this investigation. That was the whole point, right? So then the next thing that the Times sold us, the FBI sources talking to the Times sold us, and these New York Times dutifully recorded it, was the next thing they said was, no, it was George Papadopoulos. Got drunk in Australia and bragged to the ambassador that he knew that the Russians had Hillary emails. And the ambassador called the FBI and said, listen, the Trump campaign must have something on. That was the next thing they had. Now, listen. That was the next time they were trying to tell us how the investigation got started. Now listen to this, okay? This is the opening line of this story. Codename Crossfire Hurricane, the secret origins of the Trump investigation. Within hours of opening an investigation into the Trump campaign's ties to Russia in the summer of 2016, the FBI dispatched a pair of agents to London on a mission so secretive that all but a handful of officials were kept in the dark. Their assignment, which has not been previously reported, was to meet the Australian ambassador who had evidence that one of Donald J. Trump's advisors knew in advance about a Russian election meddling. After tense deliberations between Washington and Canberra, top Australian officials broke with diplomatic protocol and allowed the ambassador, Alexander Downer, to sit for an FBI interview to describe his meeting with the campaign advisor, George Papadopoulos. If you listen to that carefully, which you have to, the investigation had already started, and they didn't talk to him until August 2nd. And Nunes says no official intelligence was delivered to the FBI prior to July 31st, which means, so how did he know, how did Downer, the ambassador, know and get these details, right? What started this investigation? What started the investigation? Now, here's the other thing, and this is truly amazing. And listen to the way it's written, because all this whole thing is just to sell the idea that, there wasn't a spy, because now they're saying there was a spy in the Trump campaign. Well, there was a spy. So here's what they say. The FBI investigated 4 unidentified Trump campaign aides in those early months, congressional investigators revealed in February. The 4 men were Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, Carter Page, and Mr. Papadopoulos, current former officials said. The FBI obtained phone records and other documents. So remember, Trump said I was bugged. Remember, he said that they obtained phone records and other documents using national security letters, a secret type of subpoena, officials said. And at least one government informant met several times with Mr. Page and Mr. Papadopoulos, current and former officials said. A government informant met, they had a spy informant. They had a spy in the campaign. You know, this is an amazing, I mean, just think about this narrative for a minute, okay? Because I know these conspiracy stories, these massive stories that get so confusing, but just think about this. Somebody says, somebody in the campaign, George Papadopoulos, a minor aide in the campaign, says, I hear that the Russians have emails from Hillary Clinton. And the FBI, which has just cleared a woman who clearly broke the law, clearly mishandled classified documents, they've just kind of, the FBI launches a massive, massive investigation into the opposition candidate's presidential campaign. I mean, this is truly Central American tin pot dictator stuff. And this is the Obama administration. And way down in the story, this is like paragraph 70 or something like this, it says a year and a half later, no public evidence has surfaced connecting Mr. Trump's advisors to the hacking or linking Mr. Trump himself to the Russian government's disruptive efforts. You know what else they've never proved? They've never proved that the Russians accomplished anything. I mean, this was, all the spies on both sides mess with each other's elections. But this, so far, all they have gotten is this Rocky and Bullwinkle, Boris Badenoff campaign on Facebook to try and put out a couple of ads about, helping Donald Trump's campaign. Now, today or yesterday, the Senate committee said, yes, they were trying to help Trump's campaign. It wasn't equal on both sides, but they have never shown that this accomplished anything. So it didn't accomplish anything. Maybe this guy saw some emails, maybe somebody told them about this, and they launched this massive, massive investigation. And the New York Times, which has been relentless in attacking the U.S. government when it tries to defend us from our enemies, Abu Ghraib, Pentagon Papers, all these things that they have been relentless in, CIA, questioning of terrorists, all that stuff they've been incredibly, incredibly moralistic about. Now, suddenly they're defending it when the very nature of our elections is threatened by Barack Obama's administration. Unbelievable. Here is the other thing. Do you remember Strzok and Page, right? The lovers in the FBI, right? And they're texting back and forth, and they hate Donald Trump. And they're so happy when the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails ends and they can start going after Trump because they know they can't do anything about Hillary because there's no way the Justice Department is going to indict her. So their investigation is just a waste of time. They're just, pounding sand, basically. But now they're going off to get Trump. And remember, he wrote this letter and saying, I want to believe the path, this is Strzok writing to Page. He says, I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way Trump gets elected. But I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40. Now, what he's obviously saying is, that this Russian investigation, just in case he wins, will be able to mess up his administration by investigating forever, which is exactly what they've done. Now, listen to the New York Times on this. Listen to them twist this around. Mr. Trump says that message revealed a secret FBI plan to respond to his election. We'll go to phase 2 and we'll get this guy, he told the Wall Street Journal. This is the FBI we're talking about, and that is treason. But, says the New York Times, officials have told the Inspector General something quite different. They said Ms. Page and others advocated a slower, circumspect pace, especially because polls predicted Mr. Trump's defeat. They said that anything the FBI did publicly would only give fodder to Mr. Trump's claims on the campaign trail that the election was rigged. So they didn't want to get caught rigging the election because then it might rig the election against them. Mr. Strzok countered that even if Mr. Trump's chances of victory were low, like dying before 40, the stakes were too high to justify. And It's the same. It's the same damn thing. He wanted an insurance policy again, and even the Times admits, that they were absolutely certain Trump was going to lose, and that is what powered them. That is what powered them. And again, these are the people who take such pride in exposing our security forces and our spies and our secret war plans. As long as they're defending our enemies, when they're defending the Vietnamese, the communists in Vietnam, they can release the Pentagon Papers. When they're defending the terrorists overseas, they can expose Abu Ghraib. They can expose secret, CIA interrogation techniques. Maybe went over the line, not to me, but they may have gone over the line. As long as it's helping them. But if it's an attack on the sacredness of the Democrats' right to own our government, then they're going to cover up for it. And what could be a greater attack on America than a sitting president and his administration launching a major, major investigation into the opposing party's campaign? What could be worse than that? I do not understand it. I do not understand how the reporters at the New York Times look at themselves in the mirror every day and say, oh, yes, I'm a journalist. My job is to make sure you think the right things. My job, it's not the fact, facts. Facts are great, but my job is to make sure that my readers are doing right thinking.